everyone, I'm April, a dignity coach with Prophit Co. Today, I'm spending some time with our founder, Joe Kiedinger, as he talks about reimagining leadership through dignity. Hi, Joe.
Hey, April.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk a little bit today about your latest talk.
Yeah.
Your current talk talks about reimagining leadership. Can you give us an idea of what that really means, what that looks like in the workplace?
Yeah, reimagining leadership has been something I've stumbled upon. I've always been a student of leadership since my late 20s, and I've realized that the world has really changed. It's no surprise that the world changes, right? It's just that there's certain concepts of leadership that we were taught that just have to be reimagined. So for example, accountability has to be reimagined. Focusing on the punishment. If you do this, you'll be punished. You'll lose points, you'll do this. We have to reimagine who we're holding someone accountable to. The old frame of thought was to me, the new frame of thought is to them. And concepts of reimagining what it's like to understand a person. Reimagining that as a leader, we can't know someone's personal life. And now we have to reimagine it as leaders. It's a serious invasion of someone's personal life. It's your duty to understand someone's personal life, because understanding that describes and explains why they behave the way they do, fears they're not sharing with you, just humanizing them and not objectifying them as, oh, that's the position. Well, you're hiring this position. You know how those people are, right? We have to say, no, that's Carlos and that's Mary and that, they have a name. And so we have to reimagine those things.
Awesome. So you often talk about the importance of a person's story.
Yeah.
I know you have kind of developed a mantra, your story matters.
Totally.
So can you share with us a little bit of your story and how it kind of ties into this whole idea of reimagining leadership?
You got it. So my personal story from my youth, just a highlight of that, is I was raised with the youngest of a family of 5. We were a very musical family. We were very, I was on stage by the age of 3. So being on stage is very comfortable for me. And my mother taught me how to be spontaneous. My mother taught me how just to try whatever you want. So as an adult, I'm not afraid to just try things, and it can really get people nervous who don't have that perspective. Like, let's just try it and see what happens. Some folks say, no, you need a plan and a structure and a strategy of what we're gonna do here, right? And I'm not against those things. I just like to try things because sometimes something will stick and you go, that's fascinating. As far as a story of how our company evolved as an adult is my children. My children have impacted how I see the world. And the first time I was introduced to adulting and being a parent is when I met my stepson Alex, and he was 3 at the time. Now he's 23, and he was very different from me. And I had to reimagine saying things like, I wish you could be more like this, which I'm just describing myself. Or I wish you could be more like that. Saying it, maybe not that direct, but in subtle ways. You look at a child and they pick up on that. And instead going, who is this unique, beautiful child? It's my job to pull out of him, to help him tell me who he is. That was really the biggest discovery of story. And once I was able to ask him questions and lead him in a way to understand who he is, I was able to appreciate that. And so his serious ways, which are not like my enthusiastic ways, actually became endearing and beautiful. And if I wanted to connect with him, I had to be more serious. And each of my beautiful daughters, who are now 16 and 14 and 12, no, 17, 15 and 12. Good Lord, they're growing up. It helped set me up for success in understanding their uniqueness and just sitting back and going, hey, this is their life. It's not mine, and I need to get to know them as unique people.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So let's talk about accountability.
All right.
You have come up with a really wonderful definition of accountability. And I remember the first time that you shared it with me, I was pretty much blown away. I'd never really thought about it in that same way. And so I'd like you to share what your definition of accountability is. And again, how does that tie into the way that we share our stories and the way that we reimagine this whole idea of leadership?
Sure. Well, my brain's like a sponge. So I hear inspiration from 10 years ago and I can pull it out at any moment. And I know I was inspired to understand the new definition of accountability, to give credit whoever that was, because I don't quite remember. But I do remember that accountability, the old version, is punishment. You need to hold your people accountable. It's basically, you need to yell at your people. You need to scream at them. That's the expression that most people hear when they hear the word accountability, like in a punishment. But it really is made up of two words, account and ability. So you need to hold a person in account of their ability. Hold the person in account of their ability. So for example, Einstein is often credited with a statement of, you can't expect a fish to climb a tree. Its whole life it'll feel like a failure. A lot of times in business, we just hire a heartbeat, especially in hourly positions, and we expect them just to do maybe all these tasky things, or we expect them to be personalities in front of customers, right? You can't hold a person in account of an ability that they naturally don't have. Some people are very intimidated to be in front of people and they're kind of like, hello, how you doing? But in the back, they rock making product or running a production cycle, where reversely, some people stumble and are not really good at the tasky, nitty-gritty stuff, but they're really good out in front of people. And to really understand that and not just say, when you start here, and then you go to here, and then you go. I see companies doing that. When you enter, you go here, then you go here, then you go here. What I'm saying is, we need to rethink that and reimagine that when an individual comes into our care, how can we really get to know them and understand where they shine, so we can hold them in account of their ability? And you're holding them in account of their ability to themselves, not to you. So you're explaining what needs to be done, but if they go outside of that, you've already had this discussion where you're saying, you told me that this is comfortable for you. We delved into that, and now you're kind of letting yourself down now. Not me. You're letting yourself down. That changes everything when someone goes, oh, accountable to me? Yeah, it's your life. Show up.
That's awesome. I still love that definition. Every time I hear it, it makes me stop and think just a little bit about it. So thank you for that. So I have seen you do lots of speeches. I have been to lots of your trainings. You've been a great mentor. And one of the things that I am so intrigued by is your challenge that you give leaders to get vulnerable. That they really can't get their employees to feel safe and to be especially emotionally safe without that vulnerability. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, you bet. When I discovered the power of vulnerability, I didn't believe it at first. I thought as a leader, again, reimagining leadership, that you have to have all the answers. I was raised to fake it to make it. Just walk in tall and walk around fast and pretend you're busy and you're in charge, right? Well, that has gone out the window. People see through that right away. You just have to be authentically you. And vulnerability comes from the root to wound. And so who wants to be wounded, right? There's a statement that says, when you're weak, you are strong. And what that really means is that when you can show some vulnerability, I don't mean oversharing, I mean some vulnerability to say, I'm struggling with this and I need your help. The folks you lead go, oh, that's so cool, I want to help you. We're all wired to want to help each other. And so I coach leaders, I remember I was talking with one leader and they had an offsite in France. And this individual, brilliant leader, and she was feeling overwhelmed that she was the authority, and leading this department, and that she had to go in with the answers and all this sort of thing. And I just said to her, that's not what a leader does. A leader is not the subject expert. The leader's in charge of the subject, and gathers the experts. That's inspiring. You have your agenda, you don't have the answers. That's why you're having an offsite. That's why you're bringing your team together. You want them to contribute to the answer. And when they contribute to the answer, it's going to be a better answer because more are better than one. And you're not going to show up and say, here's what we're doing. Well, that's not inspiring. And it may not be the right way. So if you believe you are the subject expert, vulnerability would say, no, you're in charge of the subject. Gather some experts to help you make the right decisions. And so part of learning a person's story and understanding their story is vulnerable. To share your story is vulnerable. You don't have to go, if you've had some terrible things in your past that the details are things that you wouldn't share, you shouldn't share the details with everyone. Only a few people are reserved for that. And people should know part of your story because that's what makes you human and that's what helps people connect. And it takes some vulnerability to be a leader today and be successful. We have to reimagine that.
Mm-hmm. So how do you get started telling your story?
Yeah, that's a great question. Getting started is kind of like I'm from the Midwest, so we have a thing called the Great Lakes. And if you ever visit the Great Lakes, they're they're international treasure, they're a wonder of the world, and they're cold as heck. Even in August, they're pretty darn chilly. Think of a whole winter, right? And so, however, if you ever have an experience of going to the Great Lakes and you're on this beautiful beach, which is kind of like a freshwater ocean. It's beautiful if you've never experienced it. And it's chilling. But when you walk in, let's say in July, August, even June, if you've had a hot spring, you walk in and your feet are getting numb. Like you're like, whoa, that's cold. But you can handle your feet in there, right? And then if you just sat and talked with your friend on a beautiful day, you'd realize that your feet are really comfortable right now. It's not that cold. And you might go to your knees. And that's chilly. And you might even get to your mid-thigh. That's chilly but comfortable. And you realize at that point, you're not going any deeper, right? Some get brave and dunk into it. But most people are satisfied right there. We're asking you just to go a little over the knee deep because your personal relationships should know you from the waist up, right? And so telling your story, how do you start? Just ask some really just basic questions like, what are you most proud of in your life and why? Did you have siblings? What was it like growing up in your decade or whenever you grew up? If you want to go a little deeper up to the knees, what was the hardest thing you ever had to overcome? It's really a few questions that can get you really started with it. And as a leader, the most powerful question you can ask anyone is, what are 3 things I can do better to be a better leader for you? What are 3 things I can do to be a better leader for you? And when you ask that question, you better give them time because they are not expecting you to ask that question. And just in you asking that question shows bravery, shows courage, it shows a commitment to that person. And it shows you want to listen. And set up a lunch or a meeting and give them time, but they have to come with at least 3 things they can do to be better. And just take notes and listen. And when they're done telling you, thank you. I'll work on that. And that's it. Now you got credit for listening. If you start getting into, well, the reason I do that is, you're not being vulnerable. Can you listen? Just listen. It's something I struggled with in my earlier career, and I may not be where I want to be, but hopefully I'm a little better than I was.
Absolutely. That's awesome. So now, we've been talking about this story thing, and certainly here at Prophit, we talk about it a lot. Do you have maybe an example of how you grew into this idea of story, just from your own, an example of a way that you saw this be more beneficial in your business?
So we always tell our clients, you cannot read your label from inside your own bottle. It takes someone from the outside to look at you And that's the role we play. We're not here to tell businesses what to do. We're here to make some things obvious that maybe they don't see. And we give them a path or a variety of paths to follow. We do the same thing. We have outside experts who we bring into our company to read our label. And one of these experts shared with us the power of story and the workings of Brene Brown. Profit is a combination of be a prophet to make a profit. And where our name comes from is a story of in the back in the day, we were an advertising company. That's how we started. We evolved into corporate culture because we realized that advertising isn't going to help a broken business. It will only propel what was going to happen anyway. So we have to get to the root of helping with customer service and structure and strategy, and we have to really help the core and to get the culture right, and then the business will flourish. So that's how we've evolved in organizational health. Well, during the early days, when it was advertising, I screwed up on a campaign. It was just my wife and I, small business, just starting. It was our first client, and I screwed up on a campaign that I thought could be better. And I said to my brother, who at the time was a priest, now married, 3 children, and I said to him, I wish I could be a prophet and predict the future that this was going to fail, because here I am a year into my business and I'll probably be fired, right? And he said, oh, grasshopper, the prophet couldn't predict the future. The prophet could see where you were and would tell you if you're heading up or heading down. And the prophet got his or her source from a higher source. They were not self-knowing. They were good listeners, and they just shared another message. And I thought, boom, maybe I don't have to reinvent marketing and advertising. I could just learn from others. And so I just started studying companies that I love, like Disney and Zappos, Men's Warehouse, back in the George Zimmer years. And I reached out to all those folks, asked questions, took courses. Other folks who I admire their brand locally, ask questions, learn. And that's how Prophit got its name. Be a prophet to make a profit, the combination of those 2 words. So it's in our DNA just to learn. So when you ask, how did you come up with this story? It's because there's so much to know. And we sit back and we bring in experts for our company so that we can learn more and be exposed to more things. Because I will tell you, even 4 or 5 years ago, the story wasn't something I was even aware of the importance of. I too hid mine. I too didn't want you to know mine, right? And now when we share it, people are like, I get it. And now I get why you do what you do, and I'm going to honor that. And that's really how we stumbled into dignity. And dignity is what it's all about. We have to understand each other's dignity. And dignity are emotional drivers that allow us to be successful and allow us to cope. So if we know those emotional drivers, which our software Dignify reveals in 10 minutes, now I can have a real conversation to know you. Now, how does your story impact your dignity? Because now I can see the dignity traits. All of us are driven by 5, and there are only 56 of them. And how does your story form you into who you are today? So we can get even deeper. And it's just a beautiful experience because what you feel lasts. What you tell me, I forget. But what I feel, I don't forget.
So Joe, I really love this idea of your story matters. Can you share an example of how that has changed your business?
Yes, I absolutely can. And this is just one story. And you can find what we call Dustin's story on our website. So search our website to hear him tell his story. Dustin is a programmer, and he is our only programmer. So he writes code, okay? And if you were to objectify a programmer, they tend to have grown up into video games, right? As a young age, they play games. They're just kind of these wonderful guys and gals, but they're introverted and they're quiet. Like if we were to objectify a programmer, because people like to objectify people, that's how Dustin came across. Okay, he wore he always came to work with a hoodie on or whatever that was, and he would do great programming. He programs Dignify, Dignify is our cornerstone. It reveals the dignity of a human being, and companies use it all over the country. So when you asked, how does story help? Well, Dustin started to not show up on time. He'd call in sick a lot. If we even got an inch of snow, he would say he can't get here. It was always things getting in his way. And the employees, the leadership team would say, you got to get rid of him. I mean, and I'm thinking, well, first of all, he's brilliant at what he does. So his skills are like amazing. And he's a person. So there's something going on. I don't think he doesn't like his job. There's something going on. And so I pulled him aside to a coffee shop across the street. We ended up probably talking for at least 2, maybe 3 hours. And he told me a story. And all of his behavior that I saw came out of his story. It was just fascinating. And we talked about it, and I was able to mentor him as a human being, not as a programmer. I don't know how to program anything. That's not my skill set, right? We need him desperately. We need a brilliant programmer desperately, and he is a brilliant programmer. So, by him telling his story, he said, you're the first person I ever told my story to at 30 years old. And it just allowed him to go, I'm okay. I'm okay. And because we do leadership coaching and training, and because I was learning about other people's stories, I did have the information that I needed to help him unpack that story and help him understand that he's not limited by his story. His story should elevate him. His story should make him stronger. And you got to see the video. I mean, it's just a beautiful testament. I give Dustin tons of kudos. I was tearing up when I was seeing it. He was tearing up when he was seeing it. And he said, man, if you were to tell me I'd be shooting a video like this, working for a company, I'd say you are crazy. So please watch his story. Everyone has a story, and many have a story similar to his. And by knowing that story, now we can talk about it, because the story creates the behavior. And if we can understand the story, we understand the behavior, and we can talk to it and tell them they're okay, you matter, your story matters, to honor them, to dignify them. Now let's get back to work. And it's just a beautiful way to connect as human beings.